will need to follow my voice as it leads you into a relaxed state of meditation.
Welcome to the Hobby Grow podcast. I'm your host, Ben Owens, hobby grower and ghostwriter for the cannabis industry. Each week, we'll dive into my network of growers, hash makers, breeders, and mentors to give you insight into their journeys as growers, plus information you can use to grow better weed and make better hash at home. Hit subscribe, roll something up, and let's get into it. This episode, we are joined by Colin Clark, Northern Colorado home grower and licensed hemp farmer at Neverwinter Botanicals. A native Coloradan, Colin's been around cannabis for most of his life, eventually going to school for hydroponic cultivation. After college, he came back to Colorado and built a 5,000 square foot greenhouse to grow hops in addition to his modest home grow. When craft beer slowed down, Colin put his greenhouse to work researching the cannabis plant as a licensed hemp farm and has since turned the effort into a profitable licensed farm that grows quality smoking grade products that are low in THC. I asked Colin to join me today to talk about his journey as a hobby grower, greenhouse growing IPM and Type 3 cannabis, sustainability considerations for cultivation, what it takes to grow smokable low-THC flower, growing from seed for single harvest production, and advice to other growers out there. Colin, how's it going?
Good, man.
Yeah? Were you wrapping up Croptober, or are you still in the midst of it?
Yeah, still kind of in the midst of it. Most of the greenhouse is empty. I've got maybe 10% left, but that'll all just be for biomass. So
okay.
that'll dry and store easy.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about like how you got introduced to growing, when that journey started for you, and walk us through some of those pivotal moments along the way as you've progressed towards where you are now.
Yeah, so I mean, I started growing, I say I started in the 90s, but it was like the end of 1999 that I popped my first bag seed. And so I was always a hobby grower, obviously, for a long time. Nothing really large, just grow rooms, tents, things like that, my own kind of personal supply. And then it wasn't until probably 2003, 4-ish that I really got into trying to do it as a career. And that's where I started just working at, hobby stores, garden stores, selling nutrients, just kind of getting in the culture, trying to learn as much as I could through that. And then that kind of got me to the point where I wanted to transition a little bit. I just wanted to know more. And I think even now today, that's still kind of the thing. There's a lot of ideas, but what's right, what's wrong, what's actually science, what's not. And so that's always been a big thing of mine. So like when I managed grow stores and just giving advice to growers and then being a grower myself, you would have reps, you'd have a lot of people coming in and saying things. And I was just like, I don't know, is that true? Maybe. And so I'd buy the stuff and I would use it, but it was always in the back of my mind, like, is this actually working? And so that kind of brought me into the academic side. And then through academics got me really into the hemp side. And that's when I kind of commercially started growing. And that would have been 2018.
Okay.
But growing a plant in some form of another, or cannabis plant, since 2000, I guess we could say.
Okay. And that was in Colorado, or did you transplant here in the middle of that journey?
Yeah, no. So born and raised in Colorado, managed a lot of the hydro shops in Colorado, northern Colorado area.
Okay.
And then went to Tucson to go to college. So I went to the University of Arizona. So I kind of looked up, and this was 15 some years ago, best spot to get a degree in hydroponics, which 15 years ago, that really wasn't a thing. Now there's a lot of colleges that offer those courses. But at that time, I think there was a small college in Maryland that had a program, but the U of A down in Tucson had the big greenhouses. They had a SEAC program that's kind of known worldwide. So I knew that's where I wanted to go. And so then I moved down there 2013. I'm bad at dates, but 2013-ish, I kind of moved down to Tucson. And then that's when I went for my plant science degree in greenhouse hydroponics specifically.
Okay. And how did that approach, the academic approach versus the home grow basement bro science approach, I imagine is pretty radically different.
Yeah, I kind of went full circle. Like I went from the home grow bro, going into shops and talking shop to wanting to know the science. And then right after academics, I kind of had that science mentality, and everything was very specific. And then as I became more of the commercial grower, I realized that a lot of the science stuff was good, but it never really panned out. So I really kind of went back to the old school home growing, just keeping it simple, doing what works, creating happy plants. And I still incorporate a lot of the science and a lot of technology in what I do. But it was a big, like I said, curve for me. It was like that home grower base level of knowledge to thinking I know a lot to realizing it was somewhere in the middle that kind of made the best results. And that's what I've been doing in the greenhouse. Simple, but at scale.
Okay. So when you like as you got started in doing the greenhouse, was greenhouse new for you? Was outdoor something that was newer to you, or had you done that before?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was always so I grew up on a farm, so
Okay.
acreage and tractors and that kind of was always there. But my cannabis knowledge was always intense. So that was where we're growing. Because back then, obviously, it was illegal. So we were in basements, we were in tents, and that was my knowledge. And working in grow shops, it was all very specific to that.
Okay.
It was greenhouses was my first step at college. So when I was at the U of A, I managed the greenhouse that they had there, and it seemed big at the time, but I think it was a 2,000 square foot greenhouse. And so that was my first experience of making nutrients, actually doing plants at scale, how to do injection systems for hydroponic systems. That was really my first experience. And so when I went to U of A, I was planning on still being, an indoor guy. I just wanted to get that knowledge so I can crush my indoor. But then once I got the U of A, I realized greenhouse is the way, that's the way to be. The sun's there, it's free, it's efficient. And so that kind of got me on the path of greenhouse. And so my experience came from there. And then so when I moved back to Colorado, I built the greenhouse that we have now. But that was for hops. So I came back to Colorado to actually grow hops. That was my main intention, because the craft beer market, here was booming. And so I was like, let's get in on that. Let's grow some dank
Colorado
hops.
grown hops.
Yeah, the craft hops. Let's do that hydroponically. So we had one of the first greenhouses doing that commercially, and trying to do, my idea was like, let's take that dank knowledge that we can do with cannabis and let's give it to hops.
Well, it's the same family, right?
Yeah. And so we had, lupulin, which is like, the THC and the cannabinoids to hemp. So we were doing that for a while, but then that market fizzled. It kind of mimics the cannabis market now, with the huge boom, and then kind of finds its nice little home.
Okay. So what motivated you to switch then from hops to hemp? Just because you had a greenhouse?
Yeah. I mean, that was so once that fizzled, I kind of worked with CSU, Colorado State University up here in Fort Collins. And so I worked with Dr. Bowerly, and we did a lot of research on high value crops. And so we worked with Phillips, and we did inner canopy lighting with their new LED bars, and we ran those through hop cones. And then Bowerly published a paper on vernalizing hops, which is something we were doing out here for a while. So I started working at CSU in the kind of plant science department. And so that's actually when I met the guys at Mammoth P, so Mammoth Microbes. Those guys kind of heard about what I was doing, and they said, hey, do you want to grow hops, or do you want to grow hemp and start, researching this Mammoth P product we have? And so a lot of the original research for Mammoth P was done out here in my greenhouse. So that's kind of where I transitioned from the academics hops into doing hemp, because hemp was a good analog, obviously, for regular cannabis. So we could do all the research, we could do all the grants without having to get the license and do the whole cannabis route. So that's what dove me into hemp to begin with.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, especially with the burden on research as it currently stands. So, and you were home growing this whole time, or is that something you returned to?
I've always had, in Colorado, we have our six and 12, depending on how people live in your house.
Longmont allows 30, which is crazy if you've got enough people to.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah, a little block.
Old farm rules. Yeah, if you got a packed clown car house, you can.
Yep. Yeah, no, we have always grown our own, and so we've got a shop that has always been kind of an R&D, but we've set that up as it's maybe a 10 by 10, so about 100
shed
square foot.
Greenhouse or
indoor. So it's indoor. I built it out in our shop.
Okay.
It's kind of like our sectioned off. It's it's quasi dry room right now, but that's usually where my personal grow goes. And so I haven't been to a dispensary in, I guess, since I moved out here, other than when it first came legal, checking things out. But home grow for me has always been my source. That's where I get my flower from. It's kind of the best way to do that. But our R&D, we use that as a small scale to test out what we can put into the greenhouse. But in there, I'm doing all the same things. I use a grow cube grow system, those from, what is it, Grow Ace. They've got those air cubes, the teal systems. I've got 12 plant system in there. I've got Scorpion Diablos as my LED source. And then I've ran a bunch of different nutrients. I'm always a fan of making my own nutrients, but
I was gonna say your ChatGPT nutrient experiment was pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of my attempt to be like, it's not that difficult. I mean, the ratios are always going to be in the area the plant wants, but we ran Athena, we ran Cutting Edge last time in there. I mean, just about all of them, especially over the last 20 years, I've ran a lot of different nutrients, and that's where I've just come to. It's like, if it's this simple, I'll just make it myself and save a lot of money and skip the dyes and the fillers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the mystery of what may or may not be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's especially at the commercial level. You have to be accountable for what's in there. So they find something weird, especially heavy metals.
Yeah.
If you find something weird in your flower, it's easy for me to say, no, it's definitely not for my nutrient source, because I use, our salts or base salts that come pretty well tested. But yeah, if you're just pouring a liquid bottle, you can, there's a lot of companies you can trust, but
yeah,
some of them you're not quite sure what's in there.
Well, and they change suppliers occasionally. There was a spike. What was it? 6 months, a year ago, where I think it was cadmium. One of the main lines was testing hot for cadmium, and they had a whole issue with all the farms using the product.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Do you feed differently indoor than in the greenhouse? With the sun being your main light.
The EC will change quite a bit.
Okay.
I can tend to run higher EC in my indoor. In my indoor, I get a lot higher intensity light, but maybe not as full spectrum, I guess, comparing it to the sun. But
my
indoor
mixed light, or no, it's just sun.
It's just so my greenhouse is just pure sunshine.
Okay.
So we have small lights that we'll use to do our night interruption in the winter. So we'll turn those on in the middle of the night, but that's like 50 micromoles, so that's not doing anything.
Right, just enough to flip them on.
Just enough to think that it might be daylight, and then triggers them. Yeah. But yeah, no, the indoor definitely can crank, especially if I'm throwing CO2 in there. I can run my lights a lot higher.
I have never run CO2. I'm intense, and so I did the bottles, the shaker bottles, when I was first starting, and everybody was kind of like, "That's you're just
with the yeast and the sugar, or the actual."
No, the ones you buy. They were like you buy and add water, and then you just hang them. And I don't know. I probably wasn't a good enough grower to notice, anyways. But with your turning over the air in the tent, I've always kind of wondered whether or not that CO2 is really sticking around.
Yeah, no, it's not. And that's why, we have big Johnson burners in our greenhouse, but we never run them. Because we exchange every 30 seconds in there. In our indoor, I do run it, and occasionally, I mean, we have the tanks because it's sealed in there. So we have tanks and regulators, and we keep it around 1,000.
Okay.
And everything, I would say, like, CO2 is one of those things where you can absolutely see ridiculous growth if done right. It's one of those additives that it's like, it's pretty shocking if you get it dialed in on the different growth, even to the point, like, the only time we tend to get those weird foxtails and the weird jutting is under CO2 and high light. We've never seen that in the greenhouse. I don't know if that's related, but
just pushing the plants harder.
Yeah, I mean, and they drink more, they eat more. I've noticed it pretty big, but you have to have everything else dialed. Your light has to be perfect, climate has to be perfect, and if you can do all that, pushing the CO2 will definitely get you there.
Will that, from a biomass standpoint, or resin, or both, or?
Biomass is the most noticeable. Okay. I'm just seeing the flowers swell up and start to do those crazy points, and you get like those kind of hexagon buds where they just shoot hairs everywhere. That's the biggest notice I've seen. I haven't seen necessarily much difference in potency or terpenes, but just that kind of, you can tell something weird's going on. It's almost to a mutation point on some of these when you push them.
Yeah.
But it is keeping it at that high level, not exchanging it and just pushing it out. And, I don't think any of those aftermarket CO2 products are doing anything. Like those mushrooms in a bag.
Yeah.
those aren't doing anything. And
It's
like,
not enough
and we've
to
tested a bunch of them. It's like, they're not putting out much of anything. And
right.
we even brewed a batch of beer. We did 15 gallons of beer in that room just because it's like that's our obviously a lot of fermentation going on.
Right.
And it wasn't even a beer we wanted. We were just pushing yeast. So ridiculous amounts of high gravity yeast just to get CO2.
Just have it off gas.
Yeah. And you can measure it right at the spout. And it's like, yeah, it was cranking 1,000 something, but it never bumped my ambient CO2 up.
Okay.
So I think a lot of those, and I remember actually at a grocery store, we would buy those exhale bags, not to throw them under the bus, but we would buy crates of those, and he'd be like, yeah, man, they, 1,000 ppm for each bag. And I'm like, well, I've got like 50 of them in my back storeroom. I'm like, shouldn't we be dead right now? Like, isn't that level of CO2 dangerous?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Because that was before they were coming tagged and sealed. They were just open, ready to go, right on the shelf. So, but yeah, I mean, I think if you want to do CO2 in your room, just tanks and gas, and it can be a pain in the ass, swapping out tanks. I mean, especially for us, we had to drive to town, swap the. We've got I think it's a 25 pound.
Okay.
We'd run through it like crazy.
So, and you're growing for flower in your home grow, or for hash, or both, or?
Yeah, for my home grow, it's just flower.
Okay.
Just
And
for me.
then the greenhouse is also for smokable flower, right? It's smokable hemp.
Yeah. So in the greenhouse, we're licensed type 3 hemp CBD flower. So technically we can't grow anything non-hemp in there. In years past, we'd always slide a few plants in the back, but so for the personal stuff, I always have to keep it separate. Right. And I typically do the type 2s at this point in my life. I'm more of a type 2 smoker. So the 50-50 ratios.
Okay.
So I'll grow those in my indoor.
So type 1, high THC, type 2 is sort of balanced cannabinoids, and type 3 being dominant CBD.
Yep. And then they even have type 4, which would be dominant CBG. Okay. And then type 5, which would be cannabinoid null. So 0.
Okay. So like fibrous.
Fiber. Yeah.
Okay. And so how is that market? Like I'm vaguely familiar with the THCA market and some of the smokable, whatever you want to call it, flying under the gray area of the farm bill. How does like what you're producing as a type 3 flower, like what goes into that? How is that different? Like what are you focused on in the consumer experience, or is it very similar?
Yeah, it's the exact same. And and so like we don't go down the THCA route. Ours is all compliant, less than at harvest testing, it's all less than 0.3 delta 9, but most of our flower will end up less than 1% total THC. So That's our market. But yeah, it's the same. I mean, exact same plant, exact same genetics. I mean, obviously the chemotypes are different, but the way that it grows, the way we harvest dry, everything's the exact same. And I think people are getting that now. I remember when I first started, in 2018, when the Farm Bill first came online, it was weird because we've transitioned from convincing people that, I was saying I'm a hemp farmer, like, oh, for like rope and shirts and stuff. I'm like, well, no, we're smoking it. And they kind of laughed. And now it's fast forward and you're like, I'm a hemp farmer. And people are like, oh, THCA for gas station weed. I'm like, no, it's like going back the other way. So, but no, the way we grow it, I mean, it's the exact same. And that's why we first got into it as researchers at CSU. It grew the same. So we were looking for yields, biomass, things like that. So it was a perfect analog for researchers. And so you'll see a lot of universities researching hemp because it's basically a legal alternative to get some cool data and research plant without all the regulations and costs and licensing and all that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that cuts a lot of the red tape out of the picture.
Yeah. But no, we're after the same thing. We want frosty flower. We want big terpenes. We want the same exact stuff that the consumers are looking for. And even effects, it's not obviously the same effects as THC, but we have high CBD strains that, 18, 19, 20% CBD, but then also minors. So CBG, CBNs, CBC, there's all the other minors that kind of come with it. So it's kind of more of a full spectrum rather than just kind of focusing on THC, I guess.
Yeah, no, and you're hunting and breeding also, right? Like for new cultivars?
Yeah. I mean, we started doing it out of necessity because you figure hemp's not new, but the genetics smoking hemp is fairly new. I mean, in 2018, the varieties we had came from a handful of sources, and it was all industrial fiber. I think cherry was the big one.
Yeah.
Everything smelled like cherry. The buds didn't look like anything. And so breeders have taken off in the last, 6-7 years. It's incredible what, like, now we have flower that most people couldn't tell the difference between, what we have as our flower versus top shelf THC, type 1 flower. It's the exact
As
same.
far
It's
as bag
frosty,
appeal,
it's smelly.
smell, taste.
Yeah. So and that's all the breeders, the genetics. And so over the years, just because we've had access to so many plants, we do pheno runs and we hang on to a few we like and breed them. But we're small. I mean, guys like High Alpine Hemp, Thomas over there, he's probably got some of the best type 3 genetics. Floyd from Hoku Seeds is a good one.
Okay.
The guys at Trilogen, they're more on the scientific side of it, really knocking some things out. They've got a lot of good lines. So yeah, breeders have been putting the work. Oregon CBD, of course, kind of one of the OGs.
Okay.
But they've been putting the work in from taking this plant, in 6-7 years from something made for rope to something that is indistinguishable other than chemotype.
And are you buying cuts from these sources that are just have already proven as type 3 testing compliant, or you're hunting from seed?
Yeah, we're all seed.
Okay.
So pure seed production. And that's why I've been a big
for the
fan
whole
of
crop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't run any clones.
So direct seed to harvest every time, just sowing it like any other crop.
Yep. So we'll buy a few hundred seeds and then plant them and chuck them. And, the genetics, obviously, we see phenotypes and drifts. But some of these guys, like stuff from High Alpine and Trilogen, you might see a pheno out. You run 100, you might see 2 phenos. And so we kind of separate them, classify them. They're their own strains. So it's not that big of a deal. And for us, consistency, at least in the sense, a lot of growers want that linear looking crop. And for us, being in a greenhouse, that's not really a big deal. We have the sun that kind of does the whole 180 approach. So we don't need a razor canopy. We don't have trellis we need to worry about. We have 10-foot plus ceilings. So we don't really need that kind of consistency.
Okay.
And then as long as we can separate those phenos, the cannabinoid profile is pretty consistent. So we can still get away with batch testing. And
so you're not having like 30 plants that are way off spec and
right
out of the
100. So it all works out pretty well. And we don't have to worry about mothers and cloning and all that kind of stuff. We just buy new seeds and they're all feminized and we toss them, which I hope cannabis gets to eventually.
Yeah.
To the point where they can trust seeds and get rid of these cloning programs.
It makes a lot of sense at scale to run from seed, like full stop. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing it at home, as someone who just restarted to grow everything but one cut, which I had to have back. Everything was from seed, and there was a difference in vigor and health and ease. Some of these things that, you can baby and support, but from seed first shot out the gate, like it's hard to rival that.
Yeah. No, I've always been a champion for seeds. I mean, just like you said, there's so many reasons they grow better. Because I hate trellising. I despise trellising. I despise.
So you don't support. You don't do any trellising for the plants, or
no? I mean, these
stakes
huge ones. This last round, we've had to put some bamboo stakes in, and then we just got some flag tape just to keep some of the big ones up. But yeah, I tried to avoid trellising. It just makes harvesting a nightmare. Like just getting in there and trying to deal with that. But with seed, like seed has a taproot that anchors down, gives it a nice strong base. It's got linear morphology going all the way up, so it holds itself like a candelabra. It's got thick, uniform arms, whereas a clone is just an axillary branch off of a main shoot. So it has no apical dominance, and it'll just go wonky on you. So you really have to train them. You have to support them. And so a lot of, I think, the woes of indoor gardening, at least on scale, I mean, in smaller scale, it's easier to manage, but at least at scale becomes an issue of just, that's what clones do. And, and like a lot of that naked under canopy is because of a clone. They just grow that way. So you have to prune them to keep them happy. Right. And you can shove all the under canopy light you want, and they're just going to do that. That's what clones do.
Well, and like this seed run that I had, I didn't trellis any of them and got away with it for the most part up until I would say like week 7, and then everything started falling on itself. And, and with a 10, at least I've got walls, but like harvesting, I was finding all these elbow looking branches that had all flipped down and were hanging below the canopy that I couldn't even get to.
Yeah. No, I've been feeling that this last run. They got a little bigger than I anticipated, and once you get those heavy arms, So
even indoors, you're not trellising.
No,
Okay.
no. And
Eh,
indoors, I keep them so tight that they're kind of boxed in, so they're
Okay.
not really going anywhere, which I don't like in the sense of pest management, dealing with crammed. Like with my greenhouse, I give each plant about 16 square feet,
Okay.
maybe a little bit longer, and then some rows and stuff. But I like to space them out. I want to be able to walk around everything,
Right.
inspect.
Inspect.
It's the only way that we can achieve pesticide free. If they were crammed into a canopy, it's, you know, it's kind of a jungle and there's not much you can do other than just spray and hope for the best.
Yeah. So, and on that note, what does IPM look like for in a pesticide free kind of greenhouse situation?
For us, it's, I mean, scouting,
Okay.
IPM. It's just the constant scouting. And that was when I was at the U of A, that was one of my favorite jobs. I was the IPM scout for a handful of the research greenhouses. And so I learned a lot with Dr. Huber there about proper scouting and not just going to look for plants, but having a mission. Like we had charts and you would map out where to look. And even on the plant, you would map out in your days and scatter plot kind of throughout. But that's 100% the only thing that allows us to be pesticide free. Because saying we're pesticide free doesn't mean we don't have pests. We see them come
Right.
in all the time. And we've done this long enough. We kind of know what time of year, what location, what pests, and we're going to see them there. And so we're waiting for them to show up. And when they do, we snip them off. And the biggest defense is just removing leaves. And,
Okay.
and this is especially for home growers. I used to say this a lot when I worked at shops is we'd get home growers coming in asking, what should I buy for mites? Or what should I buy? What should I spray for aphids? It's like, well, how many plants do you have? It's like 4. It's like, get in there and pick them off. It's like
Yeah.
4 plants isn't that much. I know it sounds daunting and not everybody has time to get in there but if you could see them right away, just pick them off, pull those leaves off, and you're done. And you can kind of move on. There's no reason to spray a small amount of plants. You can just be visual and, check leaves, start to notice those early signs. And if you can catch it early, you can just get rid of them. Take all of the leaves off, strip it down, and then you kind of eliminated the problem. And so that's why, we have a tight IPM, but it's pretty loose in the sense like we don't require people to shower and
Yeah.
change their clothes and put hair nets and overalls and stuff on. We expect bugs are going to show up. We have a greenhouse out in farmland, so we have bugs all over the place, and so we always expect them to show up.
Okay.
That's not a big deal. It's We'll find them and we'll get rid of them, and so far we've been successful in doing that. So
Are you using like labs or any sort of natural, not necessarily sprays, but like, substrate inoculants or things to beneficials as a preventative?
not so much. Early on we used a lot of insect beneficials, parasitic wasps and things like that, assassin bugs, but it got so expensive. Excuse me. It got so expensive just to keep up with those. I mean, to follow like through Copa or BioBest or some of the companies to follow their schedule on a large facility is really expensive. And then we also found out when you're introducing tens of thousands of bugs, you're going to end up with bugs on your flower, which is kind of what you're
Right.
going away from. So I realized we ended up with bugs on our flower. They weren't bad bugs, but they were still bugs.
Right.
So
Still a bug carcass.
exactly. So it's like, all right, this is really expensive. It wasn't that effective. I mean, it definitely kept our populations down, but I wouldn't say it eliminated our pest pressure. It was just a visible battle always going on. So we got away from it. Obviously it can be done right, but for us, it just didn't make sense. And it came down to plant spacing, keeping them away from each other early on so that they can't physically just crawl to each plant and invade so quickly. And then just that constant scouting. And so every single day, I'll scout twice a day. The first in the morning, it's more serious. I'll walk through, check every single plant. And then at night, I'll just look for weird signs, weird speckling that wasn't there before. So, but that's really our 100% IPM strategy. Now in veg, we do allow to spray in veg if there's something like thrips or something we need to catch up with. So spinosad, but even when we do that, it's very mild. Spinosad, impede, we could use in veg. But once we switch to flower, it's 0 sprays.
How regulated is that? Like, I know you have your own internal standards, but are you pretty much allowed to use whatever you want as a licensed hemp operator, or what is that?
No, we still have to follow the same. So the USDA or the CDA has approved hemp pesticides and herbicides and all that kind of stuff that we can spray. I don't know if it's the same as the cannabis side. I would imagine they would be pretty similar because I'm sure they're sharing
But you're
data.
not getting away with Eagle 20 and Forbid and things
No,
like that.
yeah, no, we keep a pesticide logbook and we get the USDA comes out and checks. So I mean, we're a regular farm that gets checked just like cannabis does. The difference comes in the final flower. So all of our testing after harvest, because USDA for hemp only cares that we're growing a compliant crop. They
Yeah.
don't care what we do after it.
Okay. So
So
terpene testing, heavy metal testing, mold
yeah,
testing.
yeah, there's not many requirements. So now some states like Colorado has passed its own laws saying that they require that. So they'll do the full panel of mycotoxins and all that. But from the USDA standpoint, they're like, it was a legal farm crop. That's all we care about. Hence the whole loophole. Like the
Right.
USDA could care less about what happens after it.
Yeah.
And so that's why,
Once they
you
get their
guys,
check mark.
right. And so then it gets kind of lost in that. But no, we have a specific list on what we can spray and we keep it to oils or nothing obviously too crazy or restricted.
Okay. And so like comparing your home grow to the size of your greenhouse, how big is your greenhouse? Like,
So the greenhouse is 5,000 square foot.
okay. So significantly larger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're doing things indoor, like I've seen you as a vocal advocate of indoor being not a sustainable path for growing. And obviously, like if you're doing one tent, it probably is a lower footprint than someone who's growing a 5,000 square foot indoor facility. But at what scale, like I find it interesting that you still home grow indoors, I guess, even knowing that sustainability factor. So what scale of, or what size of a grow does that sort of start to factor in for you?
Well, I mean, to put it this way, my small indoor room costs more to run than my greenhouse.
That's insane.
So my 10 by 10 room costs more than my greenhouse. And that's obviously because we have, pretty low key greenhouse. Our only power is the exhaust fans, our water pump for the sump and the cooling, and then some pumps and irrigation. Whereas our indoor, we have AC, we have heat, we've got pumps as well. We've got the big LEDs, we've got dehues. So my little R&D room that's 100 square foot costs more to power than my 5,000 square foot greenhouse. And so that's why it's like, it's insane to think that I would ever even try to do that at a commercial level. And cannabis guys on the legal side have a lot to deal with, from taxes and all of this, the typical stuff, that I think a lot of them will complain about, but they never mention the fact that 80% of their profit goes down the drain in their energy bills. So it's something that it's hard, because until things are legal, obviously you're not going to have a greenhouse in Minnesota or, places where climate just doesn't allow for it. So some places indoor is just your only option. But, and for me, I do it just because it's nice to have that complete control of climate so I can mess around. So, and that's why I call it kind of our R&D room, where I can tweak different things. I can see, does it really matter if I can keep my grow, right at 65, or if my VPD is right at 0.9? So I can really mess with things like that. And the last couple of years we've been shutting down in the winter. So it also gives me my grow fix during the winter while the greenhouse is shut down. So
and you're indoor, are you in perpetual, or you just do, one cycle at a time from seed?
Just one cycle from seed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I imagine that does keep things. So the greenhouse is shut down from what, like now, like once you harvest, you're done for the year until like May, April.
Yeah. So at about May, we'll start planting, getting seeds in trays anyways. And then, April, May, June, yeah, I guess end of May, we'll start doing seeds. And then we try to be in the greenhouse by June, sometime in the mid-June.
So how does your greenhouse, I mean, because quality's king, right? Like, so how does, I have always said greenhouse is, in an ideal state, is probably the best. A mixed light, sunlight greenhouse is going to give you best of all the worlds, right?
Yeah.
But if it's not fully climate controlled, like you said, you're sacrificing some of that control. Like how does your smokable hemp flower compare to the indoor flower that you have full control over?
Yeah, this year was the best year. So I think this harvest we pulled down now is better than our indoor, if not the same level as our indoor.
Okay.
I think a lot of that is genetics related. Genetics has finally caught up. So we've run in these strawberry lines, which we've got not much to see it, but we've got the genetics finally that can keep up. And so we're doing just as good as quality now out of the greenhouse and as our indoor. But early on, that wasn't so much the case. I think with greenhouse, it's not that you can't grow the top shelf quality. It's just, it takes a lot more skill. So with an indoor facility, everything's dialed in. You don't really have to do much. I mean, we used to, I helped manage or operate a larger facility, or I just kind of helped oversee some of their stuff, but I could log into their climate program from my computer at home. And this was a facility in Denver, and manage everything there. And pretty much everything could run itself. The climate was where it should be. The plants were just in heaven. So it didn't take a lot of skill to run, the indoor facilities like that. So that's why I think you tend to see a lot of better quality coming out of indoor, because it's a lot easier to accomplish. But a skilled grower that can really work with the swings and really kind of dial things in, proper genetics, proper spacing, you can get the same quality. And there's no reason you couldn't. We get fresh air exchanges, we're getting the full sunlight, the benefits are all there. And so that's kind of where we've gotten to, because our greenhouse, we'll see 100-degree days, we'll see 40-degree nights, we'll see, if it's raining outside, we'll see 90% humidity for a few days, and then we'll see 30%. But the plants are, they can thrive. Cannabis is one of the most resilient plants, because we grew hops in here before, we grew tomatoes, cucumbers. Cannabis is the easiest crop that I've grown. It's got a lot of intricacies in how to harvest and things like that and processing, but from just a strong plant, man, they thrive. They enjoy that outdoor sunshine. They enjoy kind of the swings, and I think that gives them that. A lot of growers say the sun grown has something to it, and I don't know whether that's just novelty for them, but I think there could be something to that. The different light schedule, we don't switch from a 12-12. It's a gradual progression. The spectrum changes. I mean, it is
sunset,
nature. It's kind of
sunrise,
where they came from.
Yeah. So your loss of control, quote unquote, would be the lighting and temperatures, essentially, because you're not climate controlling the greenhouse.
Yeah, I mean, we are in a sense. Like, we've got controls and we have fans and we have cooling pads, but they can only do so much. Okay. And we're at the mercy of outside. So if it's 110 degrees outside, which we haven't been getting these last few seasons, but if it's 105 outside, my greenhouse is 90, 95 even, because so we can control a little bit, but yeah, we can't. Or if it's 30, I can keep the heat going a little bit more, but then that's the point of, paying for propane.
Right.
And so as a greenhouse grower, you find, where can the plant thrive? What is that range? Whereas an indoor grower says, well, let's just keep it right here. Whereas a greenhouse grower can be like, well, it can do better. Like, a plant can do fine at 80, especially cannabis. It likes those warmer temps. So it's like 85, 90, they thrive. Whereas
and
indoor
they deal with that
growers,
swing too, the Colorado swing.
Yep. Yeah, you get the cooler nights, and that's a big thing. It's average daily temperature, ADT, is really what affects cannabis. So if you have a really hot day, give it a cooler night. It's the average of the temp that the plant really kind of considers. And so in an indoor environment, they don't get any of those swings. You might get a 5-degree diff at
try
night.
Not to, if anything.
Yeah, there's no sunrise, there's no sunset. It's constant. And you get consistent, reliable results, but it might be missing something that, some of the outdoor sun-grown crops can provide.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm, from a resin perspective, I know you and I have talked a little bit about hashing some of what you're doing. That's the idea, right? If you're a resin farmer and you don't care about biomass, just for the sake of the discussion, then sunlight seems to have that je ne sais quoi effect on resin that you just can't replicate indoors, or can't, like you look at the winning hash entries in a lot of these competitions, and they're sun-grown material.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where I think there's just so much we don't know. There's so many different variables. I mean, you get into LED guys trying to hit all these various spectrums. It's like the sun spectrum is changing all throughout the day, all throughout the season. It's like, we'll never really be able to match it. And, who knows how much of that is affecting it, or how much of it is just, like I said, kind of that novelty. Because also, I think there's a lot of people that are very passionate about where their plant comes from, whether or not it's rooted in anything. Like, some people just want indoor and they want technology, and then some people want organic from the soil outside. And so I think a lot of bias plays into what people think is quality, which is cool. I mean, every plant has a story, and every grower is trying to share that story. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's hard to say what is actually working. And so that's why I always default to, all right, if they're both producing great quality, I'm going to do the more sustainable one. I'm going to do the one that can provide cheaper flower. And so that kind of seemed my route. It's like, all right, if we can produce the same product, I'm going to do it with a lot less energy.
Yeah. So even indoors, like at your 10 by 10 space, like that's I mean, that's a giant investment compared to the entire greenhouse.
Yeah.
Why didn't
Yeah.
you do your personal home grow as like just a smaller greenhouse?
Yeah. Well, because like I said, the big thing is that complete control, being able to
Okay.
dial and get precise. And then wintertime.
Yeah.
So the winter for us, so we shut down it's probably been 3 years that we haven't done a winter run, which is
Okay.
ironic because the company name's Neverwinter Botanicals. That was our original idea. But the propane for us in the winter is just because we have no supplemental lighting either. So in the
Okay.
winter, we're dealing with winter light hours. So
Yeah.
not much at all. So combine that with the fact that heating a greenhouse with propane is not the most efficient. So we were, across the year, we could balance it out and we were still making a profit, but our winter runs were a lot less efficient than our summer runs. So much to the point where I just was like, well, let's just take winters off. We'll focus on other kind of tasks and projects and breeding or other different various things and let the winter kind of sit.
That was my next question was like, so what do you do with your off time?
Yeah, so a lot of it is kind of dealing with the business side of it. And so especially now, as product comes down, we've got everything jarred, packaged, then you hit wholesale stores, then it's kind of put the business hat on and focus on the sales and side of it. But then teaming up with other breeders. So I've worked with Trilogen on creating new genetics. So we'll breed various things. We do various projects in the different indoor rooms and then some of the side rooms in the greenhouse. So working on that kind of stuff kind of keeps me going. And then also, it's just kind of having a break. I'm a
Yeah.
one man army out here. So a lot of the work in the summertime is crazy. So in the wintertime, it's kind of the old habit of farmers.
Right.
You work really hard in the summertime and then you kind of relax and enjoy life a little bit and then fire back up. And I think that, I have a lot of friends that are head growers in the commercial space and that turn and burn style, man, it wears you down after a while. There's no break. It's a factory. It's a machine that never turns off. And I see a lot of guys get burned out because they just need to step away for a while, come back. And so for me, it's very much that too. It
Well,
kind
and
of
even with the
recharges my
home grow,
battery.
like it feels like a ball and chain at times to have plants that need somebody there to take care of.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about hash because when we had first connected, you were experimenting with a whole variety of things. Are you hashing your type 3 plants?
Yeah, so we do a few different things. We've started like we did originally. We'd sift it, get the dry keef, and then we'd press that. We got a couple of the nug smashers, and we did that for a while, and it was just slow, like so slow. The yield was painful, and it's like this isn't. I mean, I'd spend my whole day in there just squishing, and then the waxes and stuff that was coming through wasn't working well. And vapes, it was just a lot, and obviously people have figured all that out, but that was our first attempt at it. And then bubble hash, that was always easy. We did a lot of ice water hash, and that, 'cause I used to be a beer brewer, so I had a lot of equipment, and a lot of the same equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, beer brewing vessels are pretty much hash making vessels, so we did a lot through that. And then I got into hydrocarbon extraction. So then we got a propane system
Okay.
that we can do much more efficiently, so we can get pretty solid quality out. And it's a smaller system, but we can pump good quality out of that consistently.
And
So
that's you running the extraction side of the farm as well.
yeah. And so, and a lot of that is R&D. So the main, like, we'll kind of dial things in, and then we work with extraction companies across the country to do the mass kind of bio load. So a lot of like the top shelf stuff on our website is the smaller batch, but a lot of my system is just getting yield numbers, getting consistencies, figuring out what I can do. Because I learned early on that there's a lot of great people in this industry, but there's a lot of people that take advantage of people not knowing exactly what they're talking about. And so I
Yeah.
know early on I would send flour to certain extractors and they would send me something back and I wouldn't know any different. I'd be like, oh, wow, that's a lot. This looks great. Now looking back, I'm like, I was getting screwed. Like that
Right.
was not
Where's
great.
the rest of my product?
Yeah. So for me, it's like I had to know how it all works. And when I'm talking with extractors, I need to know the lingo. I need to know how it works because ultimately this is my product that I'm putting out there.
And I imagine you saw more consistency with hydrocarbons than you did with solventless.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like hydrocarbons. I think it's the best way because it cleans things up. I mean, I know this isn't an unpopular opinion, but I'm not a huge fan of rosin. Just the lipids, the waxes, like it's just dirty. Like, I don't know. I know it's natural and it tastes better to a lot of people, but I want to pull that stuff out. Like I want those waxes out of there. I want the lipids out of there. I want any contamination out of there. So a solvent cleans it up.
Yeah.
It pulls all that and it's a lot more efficient. We could pack 1 pound socks and do, we can pull the oil out of that in 20 minutes and reload. I mean, it's so much easier and it comes out clean. You don't need to winterize it. So, because we run a cryo, so it's negative 40 Celsius. Okay. We run the temps through, so it's super clean.
Loop, so you're recycling your propane or your butane every time. And
Yep. So it gets all recycled. I mean, it's an efficient process. It's. I mean, I think it's the way to go. And like I said, it's cleaner, and we don't use pesticides or anything like that, so we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But you can go down the route of, and again, this is kind of a controversial subject, but CRC can clean out a lot of this stuff. So it's like, I don't know. Like I get why people don't like that, but at the same time, it's creating a clean product, and I can't hate that.
Yeah, and I've been having this discussion with quite a few people recently about how like everyone was making BHO at home, and then rosin became popular. Everybody figured out how to do that at home, but some of those people were benefiting from being butane extractors, and they may not have even known. But now they're, the PM or whatever that may have been being cleaned up by the solvent. Now there's no solvent. So now that's just PM rosin.
Right.
So
yeah. And I think rosin is popular because there's minimal barrier to entry. I mean, I remember smashing.
Well, and as a home grower, like you can't run, in theory, a BHO system. You're not supposed to be running a BHO system at your house.
Right. Yeah. Well, and even a lot of, commercial guys, it's like, all right, do we get this C1D1 room? Do we spend millions in this infrastructure? Do we hire an intelligent person that can do this well? Or do we buy a bunch of smashers and let our trimmers sit there and smash buds all day? It's like, rosin is very approachable. So I think that's why it's popular for a lot of people. And then it carries that, it's natural, which a lot of people like that. And in it, if it's from good flower, rosin is amazing. I mean, I don't think you could beat it for that pure profile.
How good once you get into the input.
Yeah. So if you're home growing and you know what you put on your buds and it's safe and you can smash it with a hair straightener, that's awesome. I mean, that's super accessible. And that's kind of what I started doing. But I think as you scale up, you just realize there's a lot of things that rosin is leaving behind that can be cleaned up. And the same thing with distillate. A lot of people hate distillate, and it's like, it's a different product for sure, but it's clean. It doesn't get any cleaner than distillate. I mean, we distill our water because we want purity. It's a clean process. It obviously isn't full spectrum. I mean, there's some fullish spectrum distillates, but it's like, there's just so much kind of, I don't know. Again, it's any craft beer is the same way, your Budweiser guys would be fighting your craft beer guys. So I think a lot of that is just people have preferences, but I don't think a lot of distillate and a lot of stuff deserves the hate it can get.
Yeah. But I think there's some truth to that. I also feel like there's a different level of education from a grower's standpoint as to what some of these products are. I don't find that the average consumer really even cares.
Right.
Like, and as much as maybe we want them to care about certain things, they don't. They don't have any idea.
That's 100% right. I mean, and especially like in social media and we're all heads. This is like our life, cannabis. And so we live in this bubble of where everyone we talk about knows this stuff.
Right.
But, we're probably 20% of the people going to the dispensary and buying weed. Most people go and say, what's cheap? What will get me high?
You got a high THC sativa I can.
Right. Yeah. Like what's on sale and what can I get high with tonight?
Right.
And that's fine. Those people, there's nothing wrong with them. And if they want a strawberry flavored distillate cart for $10, as long as it's clean and it's not contaminated and it's not going to hurt them, who cares what they're still in the
Right.
culture. They can still hang out.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't impact what you're smoking.
Right. Right. So,
So you have a C1D1 then as part of your hemp license?
no, we have like an auxiliary extraction processing. And so that's why most of what we do is R&D.
Okay.
So for our main processing, we have to ship out. We use labs. There's a lab in Windsor that will do extraction for us. But yeah, for our mass scale, we ship it all out.
Okay. Well, so on that note, speaking a little bit about extraction, I did want to ask you, because I know you have some pretty hot takes on this, about the hemp cannabinoids that we're seeing on the rise in products. Because chemically, right, Delta 9 is Delta 9, but we're seeing a lot of products flood the market on the hemp side, and especially states like Minnesota. What for as a hemp farmer, like what's going on and how are these products existing? Like if you're growing such low THC weed, like where's the THC coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, like early on, I don't know if you remember, but years ago on LinkedIn, at least, I was pretty big on THCA, just not against it, just trying to figure it out.
Right.
Because I was like, wait a second, these guys are selling real weed. Like I
Right.
have a hemp
All weed's
license.
THCA weed.
Yeah, I'm like, how can I do this? And so I looked into it from that aspect, not trying to debunk it, just like how can I get in on this? How are they passing the labs? And they're not. I guess is the bottom line. THCA is just weed. It's regular old weed. It's nothing different. And there's a lot of ambiguity between, like I was saying before, USDA, where they just check your crop to make sure it's compliant. They'll test a few plants. They'll give you a pass. After that, it goes to Delta 9 THC. So for the USDA, it's total THC. So it doesn't matter what your D9 is. So when they test our crop, our test results will be 0.21 total.
How early
THC.
are you testing in flower?
30 days before. So it's definitely, and even compliant farmers like us, it's that loophole dance of we have the USDA come out 30 days before we harvest. And then when they take a sample, they taste it like any other crop. So they're not like trimming a bud. They're just getting 12 inches or 8 inches stalk leaves, chopping that up, grind that all up and test it. So it gets really diluted through that process, but then it's also 30 days before harvest. Right. So that's how we're able to always be total THC compliant at that stage. But then 30 days later, the plants will mature and it'll end up around, 0.8, 0.9 THC, which is still, nobody's getting super high off that anyways.
Right.
And it's compliant because we got our pass from the USDA saying we inspected their farm, they got their check.
So even in Colorado, no post-harvest testing required?
No. And so the DEA then comes in and says, well, we're going to regulate, because at that point it's on the market and falls into the DEA to kind of figure out what's legal and what's not. And they've notoriously said, we're just concerned about Delta 9 THC, which, anybody that's tested enough plants realizes most weed at your dispensary is going to be compliant for Delta 9. Yeah. So then people realize, oh, well, we just have to fake, the origin and then just sell weed that's, typical weed. And so, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it, from just straight buying weed and lying about where it came from, forging a hemp farm document, to, having, like, we could easily put a bunch of regular weed plants in there, cross our fingers that they didn't grab the handful when they do their inspecting. We get our stamp, and then technically everything from the greenhouse we can then sell regardless of what it comes out. And so that's where a lot of it comes from. But then there's, states like Tennessee, which they're a lot looser on their testing regulations. So they pretty much care about 0.3. So then that's where the federal government has their rules of what the hemp program is, but then each state can change that a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's all just such a legal gray area that nobody's going to prosecute it just because nobody knows the real answer. So, I mean, a lot of these have been taken to court, and there's just nobody knows who to get an answer from. So they all just kind of fall flat, which has let things go rampant. So, there's farmers like me that kind of rely on that loophole to go from 0.2 to 0.7 at harvest. But then there's people that just straight exploit it, and they're selling 25, 30% THC with a 0.3. And then, with the gummies, it's like 0.3, but then that's by weight. So then they
Right, which
figured,
is
well, let's just make a big gummy and put 10 milligrams of THC in there. And so, and then same with the drinks, you can just dilute it because at that point it's by weight. So there's all
but
sorts of
those
ways.
cannabinoids, like the actual infusion, like that's just coming from that natural post testing window that they're developing, or
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's debatable. I mean, yeah, so in theory, they should be extracting it. Like if you're going to make D9 gummies, in theory, you would extract the D9 from compliant hemp and distill it from that. And whether or not people are doing that, I don't know. They're just buying D9 distillate off the
okay.
market and
Because like
shoving
mother
it.
liquor was a big thing, like 2017. I feel like I was seeing that in Denver. Like people were starting to turn their CBD distillate into like 1-to-1.
Yeah, and some people were doing that, but I think a lot of people just use that as an excuse to where they're because if you think about it, mother liquor is so inefficient. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I could grow 50 acres of hemp and barely get enough actual D9
Right
in
at
my mother liquor.
0.8% or whatever,
Yeah,
like
it would be crazy to do that at any sort of scale. So I think a lot of these guys are using that as their reasoning. Like that's what they'll say when somebody asks, "Where are you getting it from?" They'll say that, but they're just buying like D9 distillate off and then then you get into the THCA, whereas you could buy a bucket of THCA, isolate online right now, crush that into anything you want, and it's technically fully legal.
right.
So I went from figuring out can I do it years ago legally, realizing I can't, and then I just never wanted to go that route. It's
Yeah.
like I found my niche. And so I didn't really support it until I started to realize one, it's kind of what national federal legalization would look like if it ever happened.
Right.
People just doing whatever they want,
Yeah.
let the people pick who they
Let the
support.
states
And
decide. Fed
yeah,
says go.
there's gonna be bad actors, there's gonna be good ones, but just let everybody have access. Like that should be what legalization looks like. So then for a while I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. Like these guys are forcing legalization. Like I don't think federally it's gonna happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
But these guys are doing it. Like they're out there just selling weed wherever they want. I'm like,
It's on
all
the
right,
internet. Buy it now. 37 states
right.
shipping.
So I'm like, that's kind of cool. Like I can't really hate on that. But then I also realized all the backlash is going to shut me down. So like all of these people that are saying, "Oh, this is destroying our kids. This is terrible," which there are a lot of bad stuff
Actors.
out there, but also designer drugs have been around forever, man. Like that's not anything new. You could go long before hemp was around. You could go to the gas station and get all sorts of things that would get you high.
Right.
Like that's
Spice,
not anything
K2,
new.
like it.
You can get the benzos and like little blueberries. You can get the yellow jacket ephedra pills. Like this isn't anything new. It's just cannabis. The large cannabis industry is definitely getting scared because now they have competition that they can't really fight for.
And the
And I get it,
competition
right?
doesn't have the 280E obstacle.
Right. And I get it, but it's like, yeah, that sucks, but don't like just destroy it because you're losing money.
Right.
I don't know. Because then, like what Gavin did what Newsom did in California, enough of the cannabis guys lobbied and said, let's stop this. And he's like, okay. So he stopped all of it. So zero THC. So like my products would be illegal there. If I was operating in California, I'd be out of business. So
Because
it's
of
like,
this other side of the hemp industry.
yeah, because they went too far instead of like logically saying, okay, well, let's stop the intoxicating stuff. Let's stop this stuff. Let's allow the people actually doing CBD. Let's let them be in business. But they didn't do that. They just said, let's get rid of it all.
Well, because it's
So,
also the government. I mean, like their education level and familiarity with the plant has proven to be low.
right. Yeah. And they don't care. They're just going to listen to the people pushing it. And so that's why I stopped kind of the fear mongering of let's stop all this because I realized this is where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
People are going to get too upset about it that they're just going to shut it down without really realizing what they're doing. So,
Well, and I mean, I've said that the A flower, like I have a buddy in North Carolina who's on the show, and he walks through very specifically how they comply with North Carolina ag, to produce a THCA product. That all said, I remember I have a buddy who owns a smoke shop in South Carolina, and when they were first starting to sell hemp, like prepackaged in smoke shops, I was like, dude, like, are you doing deli style? And he was like, no, we would never sell raw flower because you want to talk about getting rated immediately in a place like South Carolina. Like that
yeah.
pushes the envelope. that's what draws attention. And I feel like what you're saying, like if keeping it in certain products is fine until you see ounces of weed for what a common person considers weed on the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. They just pushed it too far,
Yeah.
and selling, 99% THC vape carts online in
THCP, THCJ, whatever.
yeah, dude, in like packaged in cartoons. And it's like, of course that's going to, so that's where I worry, because it will, like I said, if what happened in California happens in Colorado, I'm out of business. Like, and I'm providing products that aren't doing any of that.
Right.
So like your grandma that takes CBD tinctures, she can no longer get it. So, I don't know. I don't know what the legal landscape will eventually hold out, but I kind of like the idea of just let people go for it.
Yeah.
Like, consumers make your own decision. Don't buy some weird thing from a gas station with no business listed that, claims to get you high for 72 hours.
Right.
Like, have some agency in your own safety. Like, avoid that. Look into, and it's what I say for commercial growers. Yeah, it's like, look into who you're buying from. Get some knowledge, which is hard to do at a dispensary. I mean, you go to a dispensary and say, who grew this? They'll be like, what? I don't know. Like,
well, and what does that grow look like? I mean, to your point about not shopping at dispensaries, I have a hard time buying weed from a farm I haven't seen.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that should be the future. Everyone talks about COAs and we need testing, we need regulations. It's like, we need transparent businesses that have integrity, that are accessible. Like, if somebody wants to contact me about my flower, I'm happy to talk to them. Like, and that's why I'm online a lot with what we do and how we grow. I'm very behind the scenes in a lot of what we do, because I'm not hiding anything. I'm not one of those companies that is being nefarious and trying to make money. It's like, I'm very open about what we're doing and showing people that this is how you form your decision. This is how you say, I've seen that guy. I kind of like what he's doing. He seems like somebody I can trust. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't know me. I could be putting on this giant show for everybody.
Right. Spraying D8 in the back.
Right. But you have to have some level of trust. You got to give these businesses a chance. And I think that is just, there's this kind of wall right now there's the grower that secretly grows it, and then they drop it off in a dispensary. It shows up in a glass jar, and you take it home. And then a few months later, you get a recall notice that you smoked, bifithrin. So it's like, regulations aren't working in the controlled scene either. So it's like, we just need to trust the grower. Like, figure out who grew it, figure out who is the head grower there. Are they, good people? Just figure things out. And I think that would solve a lot of these issues, instead of just banning stuff and regulating stuff that really can't be regulated.
But do you think it's like intentional circumvention, or do you think it's a lack of education on the behalf of growers and people in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are you saying circumvention in the fact of getting some of this stuff?
We can try this new thing that's not on the list yet, versus like, we genuinely don't understand what we're doing.
Right. I think that's both, obviously. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of people out there just making a lot of money right now, coming up with new things and novel, just like the designer drug trend has always been doing. There's always going to be some chemist out there doing something to make a buck, or some guy tainting carts. Like, that's always going to exist, and it always has existed. So it's, there is a little of that. And then there's also a lot of, I see a lot of these new compounds coming out all the time. I get these industry emails like, you should try our new CB 9000. I'm like, I don't know. Like, that hasn't been around. Like, I'm interested, super, but I feel like we're going a little too fast on some of that. And I think we need to have the proper research and figure out, there could be some really cool stuff in there, but I don't want to necessarily be the guinea pig.
Right. You're not the pesticide test farm.
Right.
So are you still doing research on the farm, or no?
Not so much. Now, the last probably 2.5, 3 years, it's been mostly focused on production. Okay. And so, because I worked with Mammoth Microbes or Mammoth P, I was there for 4 or 5 years. And then I teamed up with Crop King, and we did a lot of, so that's where we did the night interruption paper. And we did a lot of kind of product testing and stuff through there.
Hence the name Crop King, Colin.
Yeah, that's actually where I got it from. I didn't have social media, and Crop King's like, you should do social media and post things. I'm like, all right. So they set me up with an account. They said, here's Crop King Colin, here's your login. So I'm like, all right.
Wow.
Yeah, no, a lot of people say that now. They're like, oh, this guy thinks he's the Crop King. Well, it was a company I worked for, and I didn't even pick it,
And
but
it's stuck.
I do like alliteration. So
No, I think that's fun though. Well, I love where we've kind of gone with this conversation, but I do want to be respectful of your time here and start to wrap things up with some rapid fires. Okay, so just quick comparison. The first time you grew, that setup compared to your home grow. Let's talk about like what was your stack when you started, and like just bullet points. What's your stack now?
yeah, so I guess my first like official bedroom grow, I had the HPS, the dual arcs. Remember
Okay,
those
yeah,
with the sodium and metal? I had those with the old cool tubes that had the water running through them, and then the Hydro Farm drip buckets with the hydrogen.
okay.
That was my first setup, and 3 plants I think in there. To I guess
And
now
nutrients. What were you running nutrient wise?
Well, it would have been Botanicaire's the pure or the power plant. I think it was. We were
Okay,
pure. You can picture the logo right now, but the pure power.
okay.
It was kind of prior to their CNS 17, which I became a huge fan of when that came out. But yeah, it was all Botanicare lines, and then eventually I fell into the advanced nutrients thing just because they had cool reps, and I was
Cool
at the store.
labels, good marketing.
Everything was cool. Like that was like I was like, all right, these guys are pretty
These
cool.
guys are cool.
Yeah, I definitely fell for that. I was into that for a while. And pretty simple. I didn't have CO2. I did have a light hanger because I only could afford the one dual arc. So I
Yeah.
had the light hanger or rail, I should say, the light rail
Okay.
that would track. And so that was my first home grow. And then yeah, so then now to 5,000 square foot, and then we make all the nutrients in house. So I guess
Now it's DIY.
custom, and then no additives, no any. We've kind of eliminated all that other stuff.
Okay. And you're running the Diablos in the indoor.
Yeah, so then the indoor is the Grow Ace, then the Scorpion Diablos, and nutrients we've changed, but I really like cutting edge. Like I ran their louder powder,
Okay.
and I was super impressed with that. It just dissolved well, it mixed well, it was simple, it was straightforward.
And what size are you in, fabric pots or plastic pots or?
So in the grow room in here, it's the Grow Ace system. So it's the square pots, but then you put a fabric pot within it,
Okay.
and that's flow from the bottom, which I love for indoor rooms because I hate dealing with drainage.
Yeah.
So with the ebb and flow, it recirculates, it pumps, it fills in. I have one tank to deal with. I don't have to deal with leaking. I don't have to deal with. I also hate hand watering. I'm
Yeah.
a big not. I don't hate it. It's just as I've scaled up, it's like it's crazy. And then even I think in my small room, I used to joke, I'm like, if you have more than 2 plants, you should probably automate.
Okay.
But I mean, jokingly, but it's automate. Well, automation is good in consistency, so I think that's a big reason too, beyond just being lazy.
Do you have an issue with, like, again, running from seed? I guess like on the cannabis side of things, you pop a 10 pack, you're going to get potentially 10 different plants that feed 10 different ways. And, with an automated system, maybe they're all getting the same amount of water when half of them don't want that.
Yeah, no, I definitely experienced that quite a bit. You'll have some plants that are happier than others, but I always I don't mind losing a plant or two or just having a runt or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm not really, especially with my personal stuff, I'm not trying to max yields out.
Right.
So if I have some that don't do so well, it's just like, all right, noted. Well, so I don't try to cater to them too much.
And then in the greenhouse, are you growing in a hydro system as well, or are you in big pots or?
So the greenhouse, it's all 15-gallon fabric pots. It's a custom living soil. I know it's a touchy term, but technically it's a living soil. And then we do a custom nutrient salt on drip on top of that. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay. So trimming, are you a wet or a dry guy?
Oh, dry.
Dry. Do you defan or anything, or you just whole plant and hang it up?
No, we'll take branches. I mean, our plants are monsters. So we'll take big branches and then we do all the fan leaves. So we'll remove all the big fan leaves and then we'll hang them to dry. So there'll be a lot of smaller leaves left on it. Then
Okay.
we'll dry them like that, and then
Same with the home grow.
yeah, yep.
Salts or organics sounds like a mix.
For nutrients, salts 100%. For substrate, I'm definitely leaning towards organic. It just
Okay.
gives you that buffer, keeps root
Just peat
disease.
or what is your peat perlite or
No, it's so we actually get it from there's a landscape company up the road from us. Yeah, a truckload. We get
okay.
like a cubic yard for $70. It's like
Wow.
scoria. It's got a peat blend. It's I mean nothing fancy, but
Yeah.
it works well. I mean, and then we can inoculate it with some various things just to keep root disease and buffering the nutrients. Because for a while we did 100% perlite and just pure hydro, but that has no buffering. Like my pumps
Yeah.
go out or something goes wrong, my crop's dead. So I gave up a little of that yield and that kind of crazy vigor for just peace of mind and
Right. A
would
little bit
never go
more
back.
room for error.
Yeah.
Seeds or clones sounds like seeds all
Seeds.
day. Flour or hash.
Nowadays flour for sure.
Okay. And live resin over live rosin sounds like.
Yeah.
What on the home grow side, on the cannabis side of things, even type 2, what are some genetics you're running, or what are some breeders that you are recommending or, finding success with?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've ran pure type ones. But type twos, I've been doing well. I guess I ran some easy bake autos, type ones from Trilogen, which for autos put out some pretty decent flour. But like old school, going back, I guess I won't say old school, but I like Ethos. Man, Ethos did a lot of good genetics. I used to run Jinx Proof. I remember running that 9-pound hammer and then that gooberry he had for a while. That
Yeah.
was pretty amazing. I mean, I have so many seed genetics that I would tend to bounce around from one breeder to the next. But then, another guy in Colorado, Bean Patch Seeds, he's in southern Colorado.
Okay.
He's got some amazing type 1 crosses that I always like getting breeders in Colorado. I just feel like the plants do better,
Yeah.
when I'm growing in the same climate. So he's got some good ones, but I tend to always sample some of the hype. I went the Skittles route for a while. You kind of see what's out there, and then I grow them. But I still have a passion for some of the old schools.
Are you still buying seeds, or is the vault too full at this point?
No, I tried to quit buying seeds a while ago, but now I get into just trading seeds or like people giving me seeds to try. And so I tried to shut the vault down, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then I give away a lot of seeds. So now I just, I'll give seeds to people like, I'm not going to ever grow these. So it's like, I tried and pass it on. Cause I feel like a lot of people do that. They just
Yeah.
collect seeds and those poor seeds will never see soil. They'll just be in their vault passed on to their kids and then their kids' kids. And it's just like this collection, which is cool. That's what I'm doing.
Planning
But
for
I
the
feel
end of the
bad.
world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What's keeping you excited about cannabis and growing these days? I know the market can get down on itself, but what's keeping you up?
Yeah. I mean, I think the cool thing is going to be genetics. I guess I always hope the legalization thing will change kind of the frontier. But I think the way genetics and the way certain companies are attacking genetics is going to be a game changer in the future. And, with just the way that they can, and not even going the whole GMO route, but like getting in and being able to do things like with knockout genes and say, like, let's get rid of powdery mildew. Let's
Right.
cure these things that we're having problems with. Let's cure disease from a genetic standpoint. Let's, mess around with different things like that. I think that's exciting, because we did that work with Trilogen where we produced the triploid seeds, which that's huge. I mean, not necessarily for indoor guys, but for outdoor growers, a triploid plant is huge. Like that was a game changer for them. They can grow a crop and don't have to worry about their neighbors pollinating them. So
Right.
I think advancements in genetics is really kind of keeping me excited and working with some companies coming up here in the future of certain things that it's like, I think we're going to see some cool changes that are really going to finally kind of help the grower just succeed better.
No, I love to hear that. And like you said, being able to grow from seed consistently, I think there's
Yeah.
going back to sustainability and everything else, like propagation is a big lift especially for a home grower.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're getting there.
Well, if you were going to give some advice to hobby growers, home growers listening, what what advice, what parting words would you leave them with?
Keep it simple. I think I always say that just keep it simple. You don't need, well, I should say you don't need, I know the fun excitement in additives and potions and creating stuff. So it's like, I don't want to say don't buy any additives, but just realize what you can do with nothing. Start very simple. Like start with your one plant and your one bottle of nutrients and see what that does before you throw stuff at it. I think a lot of growers love their plants to death. They just add this and they add that. And really the problem was all of that stuff they're adding. So just keep it simple. Like, give it basically what it needs and see what that gives you and then work from there.
No, I think that's great advice. My advice is always like, just keep it alive,
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, for those who have been listening and have enjoyed hearing your thoughts and want more, where can they find you? Where can they find more information about your products and everything else you're up to?
Yeah, so the company, or our hemp company, is Neverwinter Botanicals. So neverwinterbotanicals.com for products and their flower and stuff there. For me, I stay pretty active on Instagram, not as much as I used to be, but I'm on Instagram posting quite a bit. LinkedIn, I'm on there talking opinions as much as I can.
Firing shots.
So yeah, so that's usually where you can find me, but otherwise I'm just out here growing.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Colin. Thank you so much for taking a moment to talk about everything you're up to with everybody.
Yeah, man. It was good catching up.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for now. New episodes drop weekly to help you grow better weed and make better hash at home. Hit subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend. I'm your host, Ben Owens, and we'll see you next time.